to do a film with Marcello, and I said yes, 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 without reading a script, because I knew that with him.
She had everything: beauty that stopped cameras mid-roll, charisma that silenced directors, and a career that turned Italy's post-war rubble into cinematic gold. But behind those almond eyes and the sculpted calm of her smile, there was something she never said aloud. For decades, people whispered about it. Her silence became part of her mystery. And now at 90, Sophia Loren, the woman the world believed knew no fear, has finally admitted what everyone suspected all along.
And I said, well, then I think I'll go back to Pozzuoli and be a little teacher in Pozzuoli, and I'm going to be very happy.
But what did she really mean? And why did it take her a lifetime to say it? It's impossible to understand Sophia Loren without understanding the country that built her. Italy, 1934. Naples was still bruised from the Depression. The streets smelled of salt and poverty. Loren-born Sophia Viviani Ciccolone entered the world in a charity ward without a father's name on her birth certificate. Her mother, Romilda, was a piano teacher who once dreamed of acting, but never escaped the confines of small-town morality. They lived in Pozzuoli, near a munitions factory that shook the earth during Allied bombings. Hunger was not an idea. It was a sound, the rumble of an empty stomach. Sophia once recalled that she was so thin they called me the stick of the neighborhood.
I never take anything for granted. I mean, I think that to be able to have what I have.
But something burned behind those eyes, even then, a quiet defiance that made people turn twice when she passed. In 1950, at just 15, she entered a beauty pageant in Naples wearing a dress her grandmother sewed from a curtain. She didn't win the crown, but she caught the attention of a man who would change her life forever. Carlo Ponti, an older film producer, already married and already powerful. He saw not just a girl, but potential that frightened even him. Ponti became her mentor, her manager, and eventually, after years of scandal and legal obstacles, her husband. Together, they would craft one of the most enduring careers in European cinema. By the mid-1950s, Sophia was no longer just another Italian beauty. She was an international phenomenon. Houseboat, 1958, with Cary Grant. It Started in Naples, 1960, with Clark Gable. Two Women, 1961, the role that earned her the Academy Award and made history as the first Oscar ever won for a foreign language performance. She wasn't merely acting. She was rewriting what femininity looked like on screen: earthy, emotional, and defiantly human. But fame is a double mirror. The more the world adored her, the more she learned to hide behind that reflection. Sophia Loren's image was sculpted in the marble of perfection, sensual but elegant, strong but tender, eternally in control. Yet beneath that carefully balanced persona lay something far more complicated. She was, by her own admission, never entirely comfortable with her fame.
And beautiful, really, as a director, like Vittorio De Sica, which was a great, great teacher for me.
"I am not the image you see," she told an interviewer in 1965. "That woman exists only on film." The contrast between Sophia the symbol and Sophia the person grew sharper each year. On screen, she burned with intensity. Off screen, she preferred solitude, pasta, and the company of her sons. Her marriage to Carlo Ponti, romanticized by magazines, was in reality a labyrinth of secrecy and law. Ponti's divorce in Italy was not recognized by the church, forcing the couple to marry in Mexico, annul it, then remarry years later after Ponti gained French citizenship. For nearly a decade, they lived in quiet legal limbo, condemned by the Vatican as bigamous, hunted by tabloids that called her the sinner of Italy. Still, she smiled for cameras, always composed, always perfect. What few realized was that the scandal wounded her deeply. She once wrote, "For years I felt like I was living a love story that the world wanted to punish." That feeling that the world wanted to punish her for loving would echo across her entire career. By the 1970s, Sophia had become a global icon. Perfume lines, autobiographies, award circuits. Yet fame never erased the poverty memories that haunted her. While other stars chased Hollywood mansions, Sophia built her refuge in Geneva, quiet, private, almost monastic. Her days began with espresso, long walks, and phone calls to her sons, Eduardo and Carlo Jr. Friends described her as fiercely maternal, almost protective to the point of isolation. But that isolation came with whispers. Why did she step back from the limelight just as her fame reached its peak? Why did she refuse certain scripts, disappear from premieres, and turn down major roles in the 1980s? Publicly, she said she wanted a normal life. Privately, those close to her suspected exhaustion, not of the body, but of the soul. Her film A Special Day, 1977, opposite Marcello Mastroianni, captured that hidden fatigue. The film's muted colors, its claustrophobic setting during Mussolini's Rome, mirrored her own quiet rebellion against the persona the world demanded she perform. Sophia Loren was no longer playing the seductress. She was portraying truth-weary, intelligent, and human. And yet, the more real she became, the more Hollywood seemed to retreat.
Of course, a test doesn't say anything. I mean, it just says, he photographs well, it's very pretty, and it's okay.
By her 50s, Lauren's fame had turned into an echo loud but distant. The gossip pages shifted to newer faces. The world that once idolized her curves and accent now demanded youth, speed, reinvention. But Sophia didn't reinvent. She endured. She never chased publicity, never joined the chorus of comeback stories. Instead, she lived with quiet discipline, appearing occasionally in films like Prêt-à-Porter, 1994, and 2009. She kept her rituals: no smoking, no heavy makeup off camera, daily exercise, strict diet, letters to fans written by hand. When asked why she aged so gracefully, she famously replied, "Everything you see, I owe to spaghetti." It was charming, but it was also deflection. Because behind the humor was a woman who understood that beauty had been her currency, her armor, and her burden. People whispered for decades that Sophia's self-confidence was unshakable. But those who knew her say the truth was the opposite. She constantly feared losing the very image that made her famous. She used to look in the mirror and say, "Who is she now?" one longtime makeup artist recalled. And that's the tragedy of icons. They outlive their reflection, but the reflection still demands to be fed. If Sophia Loren's life were a film, Carlo Ponti would be both the director and the ghost. He discovered her, molded her, protected her, and in the eyes of many controlled her. Their marriage lasted 50 years until his death in 2007. Yet their story was never simple. In interviews after his passing, Sophia described him as the love of my life, my anchor, my wings.
If you are not going to be in this picture, I'm not going to do it. The one with Chicago, that I loved very much.
She also admitted, "I lived many years afraid to disappoint him." Ponti's influence over her career was enormous. He decided which scripts she read, which directors she met, and how she was presented to the public. Hollywood adored the myth of Sophia, but it was Carlo who approved every close-up. In 1978, when she was offered a bold American role portraying an aging actress confronting her own obsolescence, Carlo declined on her behalf. "It is not for her," he told the studio. "She is eternal, not fading." Eternal, not fading. It sounded like devotion, but it was also a cage. Only after his death did Sophia begin to publicly reflect on that dynamic. "When you are young," she said in 2015, "you think love means doing everything for someone. Later you learn love also means being free." That sentence, quiet, understated, was the first crack in her armor. For years, critics speculated that Sophia Loren had carried regrets she refused to name. Was it the career she might have had if she'd been less loyal to Ponti? Was it the isolation that fame imposed? Or something deeper, a longing for the girl she used to be before the cameras? She never answered directly until recently. In an Italian television interview recorded at her Geneva home for her 90th birthday, Sophia looked into the camera and said softly, "I lived a beautiful life, but I spent too long pretending not to be afraid." The interviewer paused. "Afraid of what?" She smiled faintly. "Of being forgotten, of being ordinary, of being me." It was the first time the mask had slipped completely. The truth is, Sophia Loren's silence has always spoken louder than her interviews. She avoided Hollywood's talk show circuit, refused reality programs, and rarely discussed her family publicly. But her films tell a different story.
I waited for the results in Rome, and when they called me, Cary Grant called me saying, "You won," and I said,
In Marriage Italian Style, 1964, she played a woman who hides vulnerability behind sensual confidence, a role she once said was the closest to my real self. In Yesterday, Today, and Tomorrow, she oscillated between comic seduction and tragic resignation, almost as if mocking the expectations the world placed on her. And in The Life Ahead 2020, directed by her son Carlo Ponti, she portrayed an aging, Holocaust survivor mentoring an orphan, a performance critics called her farewell in motion. That film became her quiet confession. She didn't need to speak it aloud. You could see it in her eyes, the acceptance, the surrender, the peace. When asked why she returned to the screen after a decade of retirement, she said, "Because it's time to tell the truth, to be the woman I always was." That right there was the admission everyone had waited decades to hear. She wasn't revealing a scandal. She was revealing herself. For half a century, magazines portrayed Sophia Loren as the embodiment of confidence. Headlines declared her the woman who never doubted herself. But those closest to her paint a more fragile picture. Her longtime dresser, Silvana Giusti, once recalled that before every major appearance, Sophia would retreat to her room, stare at her reflection, and whisper, "You must become her again." Her, meaning the woman the world expected.
Sure. But I was skinny because you shouldn't laugh about that. I had nothing.
Behind closed doors, she rehearsed not lines but smiles. She worried about aging, about fading interest, about whether audiences would still believe in her. When she appeared at the Cannes Film Festival in 2014, journalists wrote glowing pieces about her timeless poise. What they didn't know was that she had nearly canceled that appearance because of anxiety. Her so-called confidence was performance art, a survival instinct refined over decades. What this actually shows is that icons aren't fearless. They simply learn to hide their fear so well, we mistake it for grace. Sophia Loren's beauty was revolutionary, not delicate, not polished, but elemental. Her cheekbones could cut through the silver screen. Her gaze could disarm nations. But beauty, she learned early, is a contract, and contracts demand payment. When she entered Hollywood, executives pushed her to fix her nose, lighten her skin tone, even change her name. She refused. "I will not be remade," she said. "If they want an Italian woman, they must take me as I am." That defiance became her trademark, but it also isolated her. Hollywood could not easily categorize her too exotic for the ingenue roles, too intelligent for the bombshell ones. Sophia once admitted, "Sometimes I think my beauty frightened people. They could not see the person behind it." She paid that price repeatedly. Roles that could have deepened her range went to others. Producers hesitated to show her aging on screen. By her 60s, offers dwindled, not because she lacked talent, but because she had been made into a monument. And monuments don't evolve, they just stand still. What this actually shows is that beauty, once weaponized, becomes a cage even the strongest women can't easily escape.
And something to eat in the morning, it's wonderful because
Beneath all the glamour, Sophia Loren carried private losses she almost never discussed. Before she had her 2 sons, she endured 2 miscarriages. The pain of those years changed her profoundly. "I thought I would never be a mother," she once confessed, "and if I could not be, I did not want to be anything at all." When Carlo Ponti Jr. was finally born in 1968, she called it a miracle that taught me how to breathe again. Her devotion to her children became legendary. She turned down multi-million-dollar roles to stay home, even when critics said she was wasting her prime. But she never regretted it. Privately, however, the memories of those lost pregnancies haunted her. Friends recall she kept a small box of silver bracelets inscribed with initials reminders of the children she never got to hold. In her autobiography, Yesterday, Today, Tomorrow, she wrote a single line that many missed. "A mother's heart remembers everything, even what never came to be." What this actually shows is that behind every legend is a woman who has bled quietly for the life she built. And then came the sentence that shocked the world, not because it was scandalous, but because it was finally honest. During that same 90th birthday interview, the journalist asked her, "After all you've achieved, what do you think people misunderstood most about you?"
the age that I've reached, I think that I had in mind to write a little bit about my life.
Sophia took a long pause. Then she said, "They thought I was proud, but I was only protecting the little girl who still feels unwanted." That was it. The admission everyone suspected that beneath the confidence, the glamour, the indestructible image was still that child from Pozzuoli, standing in line for food rations, waiting for someone to say she mattered. Her entire life, every performance, every defiant stare, every perfectly composed red carpet pose had been armor. And now, at 90, she had finally put it down. So what did Sophia Loren really admit? That beauty is not protection, that fame is not validation, that the world's applause cannot silence the doubts that begin in childhood. For decades, people speculated that she hid vanity, jealousy, arrogance. In truth, what she hid was fear, the fear of being ordinary after being extraordinary for so long. Her confession wasn't about scandal, it was about survival. "I am finally at peace," and she said quietly, "I have nothing to prove anymore." And for perhaps the first time in her life, she meant it. The world's response was immediate. Social media exploded with tributes. Younger actors called her words a masterclass in honesty. Italian newspapers ran front-page headlines. "Sophia speaks and the world listens." Critics revisited her old films, seeing them with new eyes, noticing how, even in her early work, there was always a tension between strength and fragility. Her 2020 Netflix film, The Life Ahead, climbed back into the streaming charts, fueled by renewed curiosity about the woman behind the legend.
A mother is preoccupied that his son is suffering because he has no ideas.
At 90, Sophia Loren had become something she never planned to be: relatable. Not the unreachable goddess of the 1960s, but a living monument who dared to admit she'd been afraid. She now lives quietly between Geneva and Naples, rarely appearing in public except for charity events or film retrospectives. Her sons protect her privacy fiercely. When asked if she would act again, she smiled and said, "Perhaps, but only if the role lets me play myself." That single phrase encapsulated her entire journey from performance to authenticity, from illusion to truth. Sophia Loren's legacy no longer belongs only to film historians or nostalgic fans of Italian cinema. It belongs to anyone who has ever felt pressure to be perfect while terrified of breaking. In a world that worships youth and reinvention, she stands as proof that dignity still has power. Her life is a map of contradictions: the orphan who became a queen, the beauty who craved invisibility, the legend who longed to be real. She has been awarded over 50 international honors, yet her proudest achievement remains her family. "When they call me Nonna Sophia," she once said, "that is my Oscar now." And maybe that's the secret she's finally shared, that every chapter of success eventually circles back to simplicity. You can build empires, conquer screens, outlast generations, but in the end, peace is the rarest fame of all. Sophia Loren's late-life confession doesn't destroy her myth, it completes it. It reminds us that behind every perfect image lies a negotiation between who we are and who the world needs us to be.
Yes, but I think these kind of things have to be kept in a kind of, it's part, these kind of things are part of my life.
For Loren, the revelation wasn't a scandal. It was a surrender. After decades of living as an emblem of confidence, she finally told the truth: that confidence was learned, not born, that glamour was survival, and that self-acceptance, not applause, is the final performance. The irony is poetic. The woman who once embodied the fantasy of perfection now inspires people through imperfection. What she admitted at 90 wasn't weakness, it was liberation. And that, perhaps, is what everyone suspected all along: that Sophia Loren's greatest role was never on film. It was learning, in front of the whole world, how to finally be herself. So here's the question. Do you think Sophia Loren's admission changes how we see Hollywood legends? Or does it simply confirm what we've always known about fame's hidden cost? Tell us what you think in the comments below. And if stories like this remind you that even icons are human, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Because the next time a legend speaks after decades of silence, we'll be here to listen.
Well, because when you're 50, I think that you've accomplished, I mean, I talk for myself, accomplished so many things in life.